So let's go ahead. Good evening, and thank you so much for coming tonight for our session number 3 of our Networking Masterclass. And I'm really honored to be co-facilitating this with a colleague of mine, Dr. Rhonda Anstead, who's an NPCA consultant and who many of you probably recognize from some of the other work that she's done with us, the different boot camps and some sessions and such. So we're happy to be back as a team co-facilitating this today, and we're excited to talk to you about tips and tricks, more about that, and we'll give you a little better idea of the agenda if you can go to the next slide. Thank you so much, Rhonda. So today we're going to start talking about overcoming obstacles. We'll do a quick check-in on the homework that you may or may not have been able to complete, but we'll hear a little bit about that, and we'll talk about some of the obstacles that are keeping you from maybe being able to network effectively, and we'll brainstorm some advice, and we'll do some mini coaching dialogues, which is always one of the most popular parts of the boot camps and this masterclass as well, really allowing you to step inside and have an actual mini coaching conversation with Rhonda, who will help you with whatever the issue is. And so that'll be a lot of fun as well, doing those. We're going to be talking about how you prepare and research in preparation for doing these, doing your informational interview, or as I prefer to call them, career chats. And we've already talked about, of course, the elevator pitch as related to that. And we'll be diving into a little bit more on how that went, if you were able to use your elevator pitch at all with the homework. We'll talk as well on virtual networking versus the in-person, because it really, both are effective. And right now we know, yes, the reality is more virtual, but it's definitely moving in the direction, dare I say, that we might actually get back to some sense of normalcy. I don't know, I hope. And then just, following up and talking about ways to keep connections warm. When you've made these great connections, you've maybe reached out, how can you stay in touch with them to create that more ongoing long-term type of relationship that can be really helpful to you throughout your job search and your career and all of those things. So that's what we're really going to focus on. Any questions before we dive in to talk about homework? I feel like I'm back in grad school here. Homework check-in. So any questions before? I think it's pretty straightforward there. All right. In terms of the homework, who among you, no shame if you weren't able to get it done, but did anyone have that chance to, really try to, put together that list of, maybe 10 to 20, and even if you got 1 or 2 done, that's okay. But, of people that you could contact, right? Did any of you have the opportunity to actually reach out and use your kind of elevator pitch that we were talking about and working on a little bit last week to connect with somebody new? Just curious if anyone did. You can certainly either take yourself off mute, or you can drop a comment in the chat box, which we will have here available as well. And Rhonda will help me keep an eye on that too. Anyone care to share?
And also, if you did something different, we would just love to hear, so what did you work on this week as far as, your own personal goals? And so yeah, who would like to just talk a little bit about that?
Yes, Brian, thank you for volunteering.
Sure. So I was able to, I'm at a financial coaching conference this week, and so it's got a lot of great opportunities to kind of find presenters and either have a chat right there or to reach out to them. So my homework was to, you may recall from last week that I can very easily make these sort of side conversations and these opportunities to kind of set up informational interviews.
Right.
The challenge for me was to talk about this new opportunity that I have at a community college to kind of develop a program around financial coaching. So I did not prepare my elevator pitch, and then it came out really rusty. And I knew that that was the case because there was a lot of follow-up clarification questions that were not about intrigue. They were just about confusion. So so I've got 3 more days of the conference. So that's that's good that I can improve it. So
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
but my personal goal was to reach out to a presenter. So I went to
Okay.
this conference last year, and I did not reach out to any of the presenters on LinkedIn, and so I
Mhm.
successfully did that this year.
Okay.
And my follow-up question is, of course, what happens next? Like a month
Yeah.
from now, how do I reach out to this motivational comedian and have something to share with him? So
Right.
That's great.
but yeah, so it's success, and at the same time still like, okay, now what? So those are some things, and I've got a couple other things that I said I was going to do that I followed through on, but I'll give some others some chance to speak.
That's great. And when you said that it came out really rusty and all of that, that's sometimes the best kind of example or experience to have, because from that, what you probably learned, like, oh, I got to really do this. I need to rephrase that. So that, like if you want to look at it as, I don't want to say failure, but a challenge, that can be the best learning lesson, and it can help you then adapt it. So the next time you do it, tomorrow, the next day, the following day, it'll maybe sound much smoother. And by the end of the week, you'll feel really confident with what you've developed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a theater background, and what I was thinking is like you're workshopping it, like you what works, what doesn't. And so I agree with Jody that was that's actually a really good experience to have, and low stakes, right? I mean,
Yes.
people that you're necessarily approaching, but you're just trying this out. And you can see what's going to be helpful for them to know and how to introduce your idea to them. So you just dove into the deep end here, Brian.
Yeah.
Just let's go to a conference and talk to lots of people. And I think that today is going to be really helpful for that question of what next. We're going to talk about follow-up, but and so you can start thinking about that as we go through our work today. So Tom, yeah, what about you?
What I like hearing Brian continue to bring up every time is what happens next. What's the second thing to talk about? And I think that's super important, because that's the thing too. It's like, it's easy to do the first one. The second one is a whole nother thing. So I'm glad that he keeps bringing that up, and I'm be interesting to see what you what you talk about today on that. I didn't have, I'm like hiding behind the, didn't do the homework kind of thing, but
Not at all.
But one of the things I did is I learned how to be on Africa time. I was on a conference there in Nigeria. I was on one of the panels, and it was like 5 o'clock in the morning here.
Oh, geez.
But they were like, yeah, we'd really like you to be there for the whole thing. It starts at 10 o'clock Nigeria time, which is like 1 o'clock here. And so it's like, oh, that was educational that way. But one of the things that I learned there is that there were a lot of people on the same panel as I was, and on the other panels that are just going to be great to be networking with down the road. And because they saw me there, and I didn't, do anything that would make them run the other way, it's like, I have that in. It's like, oh, did you see me at this event? And this another thing, I want to make sure I get a video of the event so I can, make sure that that's out there on LinkedIn and so on, to give me some credibility on it. So I'm a big believer in the strategy that you're talking about, is like, find out, first do your research, figure out who it is that you need to be talking to.
Yeah.
And then just like anything else, it's practice. It's like you're just going to go through a few and you're going to bungle it. And it's like, it's the law of numbers. You don't want to practice on the most important people, but you want to practice.
Exactly. And that's one of the reasons why we try to create time and space for you to do that here. Because, here is totally low stakes. And
Right.
it's a muscle, it's a skill. You get better the more that you do it. And so, and I think that one of the things that's been interesting with a lot of my clients is that once they get into the groove, it actually becomes fun, because they're talking to cool people that they have all these common things in common with. And so it really is like, let's just break through the obstacles. Let's get you doing it. And then you'll be able to see where things flow. Yeah. So great. So you did, again, like maybe not the assignment, but you've done your networking homework. So kudos to you and Brian. And we had a couple of other people join us. So Barbara, Melissa, we are basically just kind of debriefing. What have you been up to the past week? You know, we had this homework of looking for people on LinkedIn, thinking about your elevator pitch and your conversation agenda. So if either one of you want to share what you did last week and how did it go? So
you can share what worked or what didn't work even. And if there was something that prevented you from getting it, that's okay. Anything goes.
Yeah. Hi, Melissa. What's
Hi.
on? Oh, there we go.
You're
Hello,
good.
everybody.
Hello.
Hey.
I know since last week I had shared my initial networking, which I was so excited, reconnecting with our PCVs here, Los Angeles area. So that was really nice. But then following that, I came down with a slight cold. So
Oh no.
I was a little out of sorts, but I'm back again. And I know this coming Sunday, we're supposed to be having a meeting and meeting more Peace Corps volunteers, returned Peace Corps volunteers. So, but I've been branching out to other people. I've been, kind of connecting with people back home in New York City to kind of give me a heads up who I can meet here in Los Angeles. So I've been able to contact a good friend of mine who is Senator Robert Jackson in particular district in New York City. So he was in Tanzania in Africa, so he couldn't do much. But when he gets back, he said he'll, kind of hit me up again and we can talk a little bit more in that area. But in addition to that, just been, on the internet looking at other sites and who else I can connect with. So that's about it for right now.
Good.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're putting yourself out there. You're thinking through the stuff. Yeah. So good job.
Yeah, it's a little intimidating at first. It's feeling just kind of thinking a year ago where I was at to now. And I had to say, I really wasn't ready to connect with people a year ago. And I think with the pandemic and with everything that was going on, which now I realize that's what has been holding me back. So now that I'm, here permanently, I feel like I'm more open to doing much more, to meeting, to receiving, to giving. So I'm in a whole different mindset now than I was a year ago.
Great.
That's great.
And I think it's useful to remember that this has been a hard couple of years, and just to kind of tread water, just to stay on an even keel, that's an accomplishment.
Yep.
And so Melissa, for you to move cross country and to, just kind of reconfigure what it is that you're doing. So give yourself not only grace, but, kudos for what you've been able to do during a really difficult time. And it also sounds like you're just kind of taking advantage of, okay, everybody's in transition, might as well spend some time figuring out what I want to do.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. I think that's the key, because I was, very hard on myself as to why I wasn't doing enough and why I should have been where I should have been, and comparing myself to, to other people. And I think that was the issue that I shouldn't have been doing. So yeah.
We all have our own paths, we can't walk anybody
Right.
else's. And it is, I get really caught up in the, why has it taken me so long when this person's had it together since they were 5 years old? And then being like, that thinking doesn't help anybody, but it especially doesn't help me. And by walking our own path, we learn things that those other people that have had it together since the beginning didn't have to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So that there are gifts in taking our time and figuring things out as well. So
Absolutely.
yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Yeah.
Thank you for letting me share.
Yeah. And we're really designing today's session to be as interactive as possible, and like really kind of dig into some of these things. So yeah, we'll be asking you a few more questions in a few minutes, but I just want to give Karen and Barbara. So Karen, I know that you weren't here last week, and you already shared a little bit that that you didn't do the homework, but I want to give you a chance to let us know what's going on, or you can also pass, and same with you, Barbara.
Oh, sure. Well, so I, as far as I can remember, have not spoken to anyone this entire week, really, but I've been caught up in my work from my grad program. But last week I did have a second conversation with somebody that I had reached out to through a friend of a friend on LinkedIn, and thanks to the strategy that I learned from you all last summer. And this person is doing work with an organization that I really admire. And it wasn't even my intention to talk with him. I had been trying to connect with somebody who was a little further down the chain of command, but I ended up speaking with the country director about the work that his organization is doing, which I was trying to research for my work in my grad program. And we had a conversation a few weeks ago, which was great. I mean, it was okay. He was very kind and very helpful. And then I had some follow-up questions that I sent to him, and he suggested that we talk again after like a week, I think, of realizing that he didn't have the time to sit down and write out the answers. So he suggested that we have a conversation over Zoom. So we had the second conversation last week. And at that point, I just felt so apologetic for taking all this time. We had this conversation. It was really helpful because he had the questions in advance. He was able to answer them all without any issues of me trying to articulate what it was I was looking for. But in the end, I just felt really uncomfortable. And he is somebody that I would love to have a conversation with later on about opportunities with his organization. And I was just biting my tongue at the end, thinking, how can I keep this connection? I felt like it was just way too much to ask at that point. So my overall point is I'm looking forward to hearing what you all have to say tonight in this discussion about what's next, or how can you maintain a connection. So I just, with this person, it's feeling like trying to figure out what's appropriate and not asking for too much, but at the same time, not missing out on an opportunity for I don't know, at least some good insight into how to break into this field. So that's where I am at the moment. So.
Great. Yeah. And Karen, you are in the right place. And there's a couple of different ways that we're going to talk about those kinds of issues. And so, I just want to check in and we've got one new person who joined us, as well as Barbara. Do either of you want to just kind of update us on where you're at with kind of your networking venture? But you will get another opportunity to talk in just a few minutes if you want to pause. So let me just give you a moment if you want to unmute yourself. Yeah, Barbara.
This is Barbara. I feel like such a fake. I don't want to do any of the exercises, and I don't want to do any of the homework. I just want to listen and take notes. If you'll please just let me do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we talked about this a little last week, that you're kind of absorbing the information rather than implementing it. And that is absolutely okay. And so yeah, thank you for sharing that. And again, this is for you, right? So step in when you need to step in, step back when you need to step back. And as long as we're giving you information that's useful, then we feel like we're doing our job.
Yes, you are. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah.
So I haven't, this is the first of these classes that I'm coming to. So I didn't get the homework from the last of the series, but I do think that I have been networking pretty well. I've been going to some like career connect things with that are Peace Corps and or Department of State sponsored for exchange alum.
Great.
And I've met people that way. And also too, I've been doing my best to dive into the network that I do have. Like the other day, I was thinking to myself, when I was in my role in the job, I had and was a mentor. Like, whatever your feelings toward mentorship, we had mentors assigned. And so when I exited my role, I was no longer a mentor and I didn't have a mentor. But I was like, that doesn't mean that I can't have one now just in my regular life who can help with transitions. And so I reached out to people in my field who were in spaces that I thought that they would have access to a wide network of people. And I just said, hey, I'm looking for a mentor. This is where I am. This is what I'm looking to be mentored on. What's your network look like? And, I was put in touch with someone who was like, I think mentoring should be organic, but I'm happy to be a resource. So if this turns into mentorship, great. But, I'm happy to put you in touch with other people. And so that way I'm, gaining access to new people in different roles, and then, senior roles that I might be able to see myself in, or who could provide me access to other people who can get me where I want to go.
Great. You're hitting on so many themes here, that Jody and I talked about in the past 2 sessions, but also what we've talked about offline, like finding your own mentor. And so before we go on, can you just tell me how you pronounce your name?
Tamori.
Tamori. Okay, excellent. So I'm glad that you were able to join us today. And we did design this so that people can kind of step in and step out. It builds on each other, but so don't feel like you're behind. And today, as Jody said, we're really focusing in on kind of overcoming your specific obstacles and broadening that networking experience. So it's not just about one conversation, but it's an ongoing connection. So let's just kind of keep going with this flow here that we have. And basically, we're all at such different places, and, why we're networking and what we're trying to get out of it is so broad. And that's one of the beauties of networking, is that it's not one size fits all. It's a very human interaction, and just with some intention and some strategy. And so what we want to do today is spend a little bit of time talking with every person who would like to talk to me and Jody about what are the obstacles that you are facing, whether it's internal or external, what's keeping you from feeling confident in reaching out to people and connecting with people. And we also really want to hear, like, what is it that you want to practice? What do you want to maybe do a deep dive on? We have structured today to be pretty fluid. And we do have an opportunity later on in the session to do a breakout room, but we want to see if there's anything specific, because again, this is a skill, this is a muscle. The more you do it, the more comfortable you get. And so from your experiences, both, in life and through this specific workshop series, this masterclass, what are you noticing are the things that what obstacle would you like to overcome? And so how we're going to structure this is, for everyone who wants to talk, we'll do a deep dive. So this might be 2 minutes, this might be 15 minutes. This is the beauty of having a small group, is that we can give each individual some time. And for those who are listening, we encourage you to kind of give your thoughts in the chat or words of encouragement, but also learn through these conversations, because since we've got people at different stages, you might not be where they are now, but in 2 months you might be. So just kind of like Barbara's talking about, listen, take notes, put in your encouragement in the chat. And if there's ways that we can help you, find a new strategy to really meet your goals, that's what this time is for.
And Rhonda, I just want to add one thing. If we might be able to get an idea from those who are here tonight, which of them are interested in this, because recognizing that some may not be, just for planning purposes, if we have 2 people that are interested, we might spend a little more time with them each. If there's, 5 or 6, then we'll plan accordingly.
Then So please put your, if you're interested, just, say I'm interested in the chat, and
just put yes.
And Jody, if you wouldn't mind just kind of like introducing, just making those transitions, and I'll keep on the clock as well.
I'm happy to do that. And thank you, Tom, for putting yours in there. You are the first one. You win the prize once she starts. So great. So
I should have thought that through a little quicker.
So again, if you're interested, put your name in the chat, and Jody will help kind of facilitate the transition. And what I'm going to do is just really focus in on what's going on. So Tom, why don't you tell us a little bit about, what you're doing, and what do you see as kind of your networking challenges?
I feel like I'm doing something really specific.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, I want to talk to people. I think that there's an opportunity, maybe to clear my throat. I think that there's an opportunity to use esports, playing, competitive gaming online, to create jobs in developing countries. Because, with a Peace Corps background and a marketing background, and in talking to several people, I think there's an opportunity. And one of the things that I've discovered is that I can find a lot of people to talk to about esports in general, playing games and being a player, being a coach, and all these kinds of things. What I'm looking for, though, are people who have the interest in creating jobs for those people. Because people will talk about, I'm gonna have to drink something here. I can find a lot of people who talk about the kinds of jobs that are out there in esports,
Right.
but not so much the people who are creating those jobs. And that's one of the interesting things here, talking about, you know, the elevator pitch and things like that, is it makes me think, okay, I'm starting to now, you know, figure out who it is that I want to be talking. I just don't want to talk to another esports person. I'm going to be wasting my time. I'm going to kind of be wasting their time. But one of the things I started doing is I've started posting on LinkedIn. And I should have been doing this a long time ago. But one of the things that I've learned is, I mean, just right now, Bing, you know, I'm starting to get pings on what I posted today from people, from my old boss at Warner Brothers. And her husband works at Xbox, Microsoft. They're up in Seattle. And it's just like, wow, I hadn't thought of Stacy as being someone that I could be easily talking to,
Yeah.
who has nothing, you know, no specific experience related to it, but she may have, you know, it'd just be a good networking opportunity, be a good reason for me to contact her again, to get back in touch, sort of thing. So I guess one of the things that's been slowing me down is just, I don't feel like I have a lot of experience in this space. I don't have a lot of experience in creating esports events or teams or things like that. And the people I'm talking to do. So, so a lot of the time I'm thinking, well, they're going to look at me and they're going to say, like, what do you know about this stuff?
Yeah.
And I'm going to be like, well, yeah, how many jobs have you created? And I'm going to be like, well, not really any. So that's why I think one of the things that I'm doing to help build that confidence and to build my posture on LinkedIn is to do the posts. Because that could just be, and then see who responds to them.
Yeah.
And not get disappointed if I don't get any response for a while. And I'm going to mix it up with things about esports, creating jobs, and international development. And people will eventually kind of come up with the idea of where things are connected. And I'm pretty sure that I'll be able to, you know, it'll build my confidence, and I'll be able to ferret out some people that I just hadn't thought of in the past.
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm thinking of as you're talking, Tom, is that is that you there's some information that you need to get that might not be, you know, super easy to research online, you know, because like you said, there, you know, esports is emerging. And there are, you know, and my understanding is that it's fairly, you know, it's growing kind of in well electronically connected countries. So in Asia, North America, and in Europe, and so I see that there's a lot of abilities for you to not look for partners necessarily at this point, but to understand what is the process, you know, how do events lead to jobs? How do teams, you know, create work for people in these countries where it's already established? And then you can ask them for less, you know, how that might apply for developing countries. What are the things that enable that environment to happen? You know, like what are the assumptions that we have with, you know, that esports people have about who their participants are, who the players are going to be. And so what you're doing is you're looking to grow something that has viability, but is kind of untested or it's growing in a new environment, right? Because I mean, there's this conference in Nigeria that you're attending as we speak. And so esports isn't unknown in developing countries. But that's one thing on looking at this, not as you've got to be an expert. No, you got to learn from experts. So that seems to be like one aspect of this. I'd like to hear a little bit more about, you know, what is your vision? You know, from what you know so far, how would you like to be involved in this? What would you want to do with this idea?
I think there's an opportunity to create an organization that that takes the learnings from. I've got a whole website created. I mean,
Yeah.
but I
Okay,
think
great. So you've got a clear vision.
yeah, because there's I call it hit the ground running esports, and basically it's set up in a way that people in Nigeria or Uganda or Malaysia or someone, people who are interested. I mean, they're not creating the next world-class team, but they are capable of creating a few jobs in their local market.
Mhm.
And I think the best people to teach them how to do that are people who are already doing it in those places, because they do exist. And it's like, rather than me trying to put together a training plan or whatever, it's like, hey, what if I put together a podcast, for example, we talk to people who have done this in all of these places, so that so people can go back and say, oh yeah, I remember when Kwesi did that in Ghana, and how he was, or Kobina, how he was able to create these events and everything. So they're kind of, I can't be the teacher to all these people, but I can put them in touch with people that are knowledgeable at it. So, so my vision is to have, I don't know why I can't talk, rarely happens.
No worries.
Is to have a fairly large organization to be able to do this, because it's something that I think that you can really duplicate. And the other thing, I always like talking about mentorship, because I think one of the things that you can find is that people in the developing countries are interested in mentoring these people. And so to also put together part of the program will be a situation where people who work in the esports business around the world can sign up and spend some time mentoring people in a structure that can be beneficial to them because they want to get back, and also beneficial to the people. I mean, if people there now they're talking to the people over here at WB Games, it's like, wow, that's a big deal to them. And so if we can set up some mentorship there as well.
So it sounds like you've got a lot of different directions that you can grow into, and that there are one of the challenges of starting an organization is that there's so many different directions that you can go in, and it's very easy to try to do all of them at once. And then be like, a year or 2 years later, and you're like, yeah, I've got a website and I still have that website. So so I think that defining what stage you're at. Are you gathering information, or are you building an organization? And if you're gathering information, then obviously you want to cast a really broad net. And but as you move into building your organization, you might want to think through, what are the programs, whether that's, I heard a podcast, I heard mentoring, I heard kind of peer-to-peer training, and so then I think you might at some point to make that decision on what do you want to focus on, so that then you can start putting things out there. And because that's what people get excited. So you're posting, you're getting a buzz from that. So just think, once you start podcasting or start a mentoring program, then that is going to build on it. But again, if you're trying to do everything at once, then that gets challenging, because then it doesn't get a lot of momentum.
No, I think that's really good advice. And it's one of the things I'm picking up from these sessions is to really focus, really concentrate on, build a little agenda, build the elevator pitch. You can't build an elevator pitch to do everything under the sun. So your elevator pitch, leads to focus. And so I like that part of it, because I think, the other thing is, it's like, you never know where things are going to go. And that's part of the fun of networking, is because you come across this person that's already doing this. What can I join them? Or it's like, or someone that, I had the same idea, but I didn't know where to go, sort of thing. So that's part of the fun of the networking part of it. So
yeah, I love that you put fun and networking in the same sentence.
Hey, it's one of the things that my little tagline is: play games, create jobs, change lives.
There you
It's
go.
like, it's like you can create jobs and change lives by playing games. It's like,
Yeah.
I love
how,
it.
how can that not work out?
Yeah. There's one last thing that I want to say, and then I'm sure that we get time to talk to other people. But have you read Reality is Broken by Jane McGonigal? So she basically did her PhD on gaming and how games can change the world, basically.
Yes, I've read. It's been out a few years now, right?
It has. Yeah.
Because I remember reading that, and that was that was really good there. Her whole concept, because so many people, they think, oh, playing games is kind of a a waste of time, or it leads to bad things. Or
right.
Even some U.S. senators have recently been quoted saying bad things about video games. But it's like one of the things that you find is it can video games in general are bigger than music and movies, any entertainment combined. I mean, there's more money spent on games than anything else in the world. And when you, it was interesting because we were talking before about Netflix, about Reed Hastings, who is the head of Netflix, or right up there. I don't know if he's co-chairman right now. But one of the things that he said, he was quoted about a year ago. He said, when Disney Plus showed up, he said, "I'm not afraid of Disney Plus." He said, "I'm afraid of Fortnite." He said, because people if you have kids, if younger people, they're not spending time watching content. They're playing games. They're doing other things on there. So it's like, that's what will be the next iteration. So that's why even in places like, in Africa, it's becoming so popular. The other thing is, yes, he is. Is that everything is moving toward mobile gaming.
Yep.
And especially in Asia, but particularly in Africa, because everyone has a cell phone. No one has an Xbox. No one has a PS5.
Right.
Well, very few, or PCs, but everyone has a phone. So, and the connectivity is just getting better and better and better all the time. And the other thing is, the telecom people are some of the best sponsors of esports events in every developing country, because they have a vested interest in people using more phones. So it's kind of works that way too.
And these are some of the connections that, we want everyone to be thinking about, like whatever you're networking about, whatever you want to do, it's not just about that one thing, it's having these connections in unexpected places. So yeah, thank you, Tom. I hope that this was helpful. And
yes, it is.
Yeah. Is there anything that you want to practice or work on?
I liked what Brian was saying earlier about you just practice on your elevator speech, on what it is that you're talking to people. And look for places that you can do that, instead of trying to avoid the situation because you don't feel confident. Because might not feel confident about it's like, that was a great thing about the thing in Nigeria the other day. Is like, I got to tell stories and I got to hear the response. When I told them about, one of the things I told them, I'll be quiet in a minute. One of the things I told them was, lead with your culture. I said, one of the things that sets you apart in Nigeria from anywhere or any place else, I said, if you're creating a new esports organization in LA, in New York, in Austin, you have to set yourself apart. You already have that. I said, you have to lead with your culture. And man, people were just applauding, and it really hit a chord with them. And I really thought it was true. So but one of the things I was doing that for is I was testing out different subjects to see what their reaction was. Great. And that was something that hit a chord. So I will talk about that more.
Excellent. Okay.
Actually, Rhonda, I want to just add one thing really quickly, just from what you were saying there, Tom, in the end, about, you wanting to practice the elevator pitch and then looking for places where you can practice it. It brought me back to earlier when we were talking about the homework, and people were saying, someone was making the point, don't start with your best interest, person. You want to kind of work your way up so you feel more comfortable. And that just reminds me of, for job seekers, for example, or anyone looking to network, if you're going to career fairs, for example, don't start with your number one employer that like is your dream employer. Don't go to their table first. Go to some of the other ones and practice, so that by the time you get to that table, you're going to feel much better about how you're doing. And it can be a really great thing when you go to the other ones. It's not like you're using them. You're going and you might say something like, a little bit of your elevator pitch. And then when they say, oh, well, what are you interested in? You can certainly say, well, I am very interested in the marketing strategy, esports arena, but I definitely wanted to just make my way around and thank everyone for being here. It really means a lot to the RPCV community that you're here. This is the kind of advice I would give to people when back when we did have the in-person career fairs and things like that, so they feel acknowledged and thanked for being there, and you get that extra practice. So it really is. It's just a very good point to practice your elevator pitch and start small and then build, and you'll be good to go.
Yes, I will not start with pitching to Reed Hastings.
Okay. That's smart.
Exactly.
But he is on the list.
Oh yeah, as well he should be.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Thank you, Tom and Jody. Who is
I
next?
am going in order of when they actually had said they were interested. So Tom was first, and then Melissa said she's interested. So let's go to Melissa right now and start with her. So take it away.
Ooh. You really caught me off balance there. Sorry.
Well, this is part of it, right? Is you
Heads up, next will be Brian.
Wow. Okay. How do I follow Tom? Because he was just outstanding with his presentation there. I really
Well, this isn't a presentation. This is really like where
just a chat, informal.
okay.
Yeah, where you at and where obstacles do you
Sorry to jump back in, but one of the things I've always found is when you are energetic, it makes a world of difference. If you're talking, no matter what you're talking about, if you can talk with energy and passion, it's like it goes a long ways.
As I said, your energy was contagious when you were talking. So there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so where should I begin?
So yeah, tell us just a little bit about, so say a little bit about what are your goals for kind of networking? What are because you talked a little bit about what you're doing,
Right.
a little bit about the why. What are you wanting to transition into?
Okay. I think for me now, the networking, the goal is to, I guess, connect, being in a new city, really get the lay of the land, of the culture, of the people, which will help in my job search. So that's my foundation. I want to start with that foundation. I have some idea what type of work I want to do, but right now I just want to connect with people. And
yeah, say a little bit more about the kind of work you want to do, because again, it sounds like you want to be broader than that, but I also want to understand, like if you had a magic wand, what kind of work would you be doing or looking for?
This past year, just thinking over, and we were back and forth, but finally, I really want to pursue international development. And so having, applied, I really wasn't getting a good response. But I decided in order to help my job search, was to do a certification in project management to help, enhance my skill sets. So I'm currently, I just enrolled online with NYU, tandem to Astra. So I just started that about a week ago. And so I'll be doing that within the next, completing that by next year. But in the, in order to prepare me. But at the same time, like I mentioned before, I just want to set the foundation where I'm at, who's out there, how can that help me, which may lead to other different opportunities. So I'm just keeping an open mind and open heart about what I may encounter. So, I mean, in just 1 week, I really made such great connections with, so many people, and it just really felt good. It really felt good that I'm back to myself again, and, connecting with people, socializing with people, and really looking for what needs to be done. How can I be of service? How can I help? Or how can we get together and, do something? So
So it almost like what you're saying, and you're kind of like networking with the RPCB community, right?
Yes.
So that is exactly where you need to be. And so I think that, and you're in the LA area, is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Downtown. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So, so that's, the RPCV community is going to be, your best strategy for both connecting as well as finding the jobs that are there. And I've worked with several clients in LA wanting to do development, and it's a little challenging. It's not up, right? It's not DC or New York.
Right.
It's got its own culture. And so I think that your strategy of just like learning what is there and what's going on is absolutely the right one. Do you feel like that do you see any obstacles in continuing to do what you're doing?
Presently, no, but the last several months there were, and it just wasn't clicking for me until finally, just having a focused goal in mind. And I think that in itself has kind of opened up much more doors, much more, much more to do. So I think that's what it was, because I was just focused on one thing and it wasn't happening, and I couldn't understand why. And now, since I shift gears, like now the possibility is endless, that I can see, like, oh, wow, okay, I'm in the right track now. And just by chance, seeing this, the project management certification just came across my, my LinkedIn profile, and I was like, oh, that's perfect. That's exactly what I need. So it just everything is just falling in place like it should be.
Yeah. So I think that what I want you to do is just kind of absorb that lesson, because life always gives us challenges and obstacles. One of the best things to learn is that you are a resilient being, and that having a focus, having a direction really helps with momentum. And so a lot of times when things are going well for people, when it feels like you're cooking with gas, then to take a moment so that when things start to falter again, because they will, because that's the nature of life, remember that you've already got a strategy, that works. And so planning for, not assuming that it's going to be easy street from here on out, because,
Right.
things go great, and then there's a pandemic, and then we all start from ground zero, it feels like, right?
Yeah.
But you are a resilient human being. You've got a great community that is all over the United States, if not all over the world. And that we're here to help you, right? And to be a community to help each other. So, so yeah, I mean, is there anything that you want to practice or work on, as far as either networking or job searching is concerned?
I think I was having trouble feeling confident speaking, public speaking. And years before, it was not, I mean, I would speak to hundreds of people. It wasn't an issue. And I don't know what happened that I just, developed this fear all of a sudden. I couldn't understand why I lost my voice. And it was mind-boggling to me, because it was something that I would do in a drop of I'm able, oh, Melissa, come speak at this event or whatever. And it wasn't an issue. But then all of a sudden, I couldn't find the words. I would just develop this, oh my God, this fear, anxiety in speaking to people. And this is where, I was thinking to myself, maybe I'll try taking a course in public speaking again, so I can let go of that anxiety of talking in front of people again. So that has been a challenge for me. That has been one of the major challenges for me, speaking in front of people, just talking to people. And, that's been it.
Was it related to a specific event? Because something similar happened to me actually when I got home from Peace Corps. I got social anxiety, and I never had social anxiety before. What's going on with that? Part of that was, it was just situational, it was just reverse culture shock and other things, but it was weird and I didn't like it. Felt a little lost. So was there an event or something that you can point to of like, oh, maybe that contributed to it?
I'm not sure, because I'm between starting service. And I remember speaking at the municipality, in front of the mayor and everyone. And I was okay. But I don't know if maybe during, having evacuate, and then we went straight into the pandemic. I don't know. I lost contact with so many people. So I don't know. After that, it's just that I just isolated myself completely. And now it's just, like feeling like the turtle inside the shell. Should I stick my head out? That kind of way. So, but I think, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, sometimes it's what you went through was a trauma. And, anyone who was evacuated, that's a trauma. I mean, you knew what you were doing, you had your life, you were excited about it, or not, but you at least knew what you were doing. From that and put into quarantine, and then living in a country where everything's isolated. So to me, what you're talking about makes a lot of sense. And do you consider yourself to be more extroverted or
I used to be. I mean, I was considered a social butterfly. Like whenever there was an event, I was always asked to come in because I can bring people together. That was just something I can do with my eyes closed. And now I don't feel as confident like I used to. So that's what I'm working on.
So, and that's what happens when you are pulled from your element and forced into a situation that doesn't jive with who you are.
Mhm.
So I think that, you know, hearing your story, what you're saying makes total sense to me. You haven't lost who you are. You
Mhm.
haven't been in a situation where that part of you can flourish.
Mhm.
And now that you're in more of that situation, it's starting to come back out, right?
Right.
And so if there's a way, again, to give yourself some grace and understanding and know there's nothing wrong with you, you know, that you were just put in a really tough place, and you did the best that you could. And the pandemic has been really, really hard for extroverts. I mean, you know, because you take away almost your identity when you have to isolate.
Right.
And I mean, it's hard for introverts too. I consider myself to be an introvert, and I have been really lonely, but I can be by myself easier than you probably can be. And so again, lots of great lessons to learn.
Mhm.
One of them is get yourself in your element as much as you can.
Thank
So
Yeah.
yeah, you're doing great stuff, Melissa.
Thank
And
you. You know,
and just-
I never thought of the evacuation as being trauma. And now as I sit here with you, I'm remembering another event when we had to evacuate from our local city, from northern part of Peru. And we
Yeah.
had to drive like 9 hours, and nearing the hotel in Lima, the driver drove in an underpass and ripped the entire top of the bus while we were in it. And so luckily for us, we were like maybe 15 minutes away from the hotel. The bus was smoking, but we were able to get out of the tunnel and drive to the hotel. And we were there, like my group was there for 24 hours, and then we were able to evacuate with the group from the embassy to come to the US. So it was just so much. But now that I'm speaking with you now, it's like, oh my God, it's just all of these events that I haven't even processed, so yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. It makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It does. You're healing, you have the ability to heal, and it was a lot to heal from.
Yeah.
And again, you weren't put into a situation where you had your normal resources, that you didn't have your community, and your community is so important. So, so yeah, well,
Thank you.
you
Oh
made
my
some
God.
great choices for
Yeah.
yourself, and I think you're doing great.
Thank
And just, yeah, keep putting yourself out there, and know that, see that part of yourself as a seed that got planted deep, that got buried a little bit.
Yeah.
It's going to take some time for it to grow, but once it does, it's going to grow back strong.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing this, Melissa. Yeah. And I hope this was helpful.
It it's now just being able to, like, okay, put it in more better perspective, like, oh, this is what's causing it. Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Yep.
All right.
Good. So I think you're in a great place. Keep doing what you're doing.
Okay.
That's your homework.
All right.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Great.
Melissa.
Rhonda,
Yeah, and-
just to let you know, we have there is one more individual who had volunteered to go. He was interested if time permits. It's Brian, and he said very open to not doing it though if you have other things to cover. So want to practice the elevator pitch is basically.
Gotcha. Okay. Why don't we go through some of our content and then see where we're at the end?
Okay.
And because I think that some of the stuff will be helpful.
Mhm.
I would like to, I would like to talk to Brian But yeah, let's yeah,
That's a good idea. That is a very good idea. And we'll try to go through the slides, a little quicker. They won't take that long to go through, so that we'll maybe still have that time at the end for you as well, Brian, or maybe even stay, a couple minutes after. So, all right. So let's go ahead. Just very briefly, your informational interview. I prefer to call it a career chat, because informational interview just doesn't roll off the tongue. Would you like to do an informational interview with me? It sounds long. And career chat is, just wondering if you might have 15-20 minutes of your time for a brief career chat to hear a little more about you and your experience, any advice you might have. It just it rolls off the tongue faster. And you can do those in person or, right now virtual, right? It might be over coffee, it might be at the person's work. If they invite you to their place of work, make it as easy as possible for them. If it's an in-person one, go to them if at all possible. That's great. You get your foot in the door into that, company. And when they're talking to you, it might be that your conversation sparks, oh, my colleague is really an expert in that. Let's bring him in. And you might make other contacts. So go ahead, Rhonda, you can go to the next one. This is just a really nice, I like the cycle or the process that's shown here. And honestly, we've already covered a good amount of this, right? We talked about in our session 1 and session 2, identifying people to interview, who are the contacts that are going to be helpful, the kinds of people that you will want to talk to, and then making contact with them, requesting the interview. That's what we're talking about, right? Is practicing, how do you ask for that informational interview or that career chat? And then before you go there, really preparing your questions. And we have a slide on this, a separate slide, but really, thinking about how do you prepare, those questions, and how are you going to do your elevator pitch? And your elevator pitch within the career chat is a little different than if you were at a conference and you're introducing yourself as who you are and maybe what brought you there, that type of thing. It's going to be more, very briefly on, about, where you're coming from, who you are, as a professional, and the kind of information that you're hoping that they might be able to provide, tips or advice or thoughts on, options for someone with my background, things like that. So you prepare those in advance, right? And then of course, conducting, the interview. And it really, I like to kind of try to make it as not informal, but instead of ask a question, they answer, ask a question, try to make it a little more conversational, and that just makes them feel, I think, more comfortable as well. And I think for you as well. And then of course, sending a thank you note always, whether it's a, virtual one or a hard copy, an actual, hardly anybody uses the good old fashioned stamps and all of that. And it takes a lot more to do that. And it kind of can set you apart in some ways. I'm a fan of that. I actually keep my thank you notes. So so anyway, that's really the cycle here. We're going to go ahead and Rhonda's going to very briefly talk about a little bit more about the preparing and the researching.
Yeah, and one of the things, I just want to go back real quick, the thing that I like about this image is that it is a cycle and that it does continue. There isn't a start and a finish. Yeah. And I think that after the send thank you note, it doesn't necessarily go directly back to identify, new contacts, but it is then, it might be reestablished that connection with that person. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But it's almost like a spiral,
yes,
than a cycle.
That's a better way.
Yeah, and so basically, as Jody mentioned, one of the stages of being, a really confident networker is that preparation. So we've talked about that here. Tom was talking about what he's been doing. Melissa's talking about getting clarity, and so part of the preparation is getting it straight in your head about what is it that you're looking for and what is it that you need to feel comfortable and confident. And for some people, preparation and research is that way forward. For other people, it might be, making sure that you talk to somebody that you have some connection with ahead of time versus cold calling, so I think that knowing yourself and the goal is to do this work So what is it that you need to make this comfortable? And then, and so whether you're researching people or organizations or movements or trends, there's so many different ways of doing that. So we talked about LinkedIn. Obviously, Google is a really amazing resource. If you're looking at organizations, Charity Navigator is, then you can understand their financials and their mission. And so there's lots of ways just to get different perspectives on what it is that you're looking for. And I also have informational interviews here. That can be a great way to research. And like I was talking with Tom, is that sometimes your networking is about getting information. And so for people who are more extroverted, then talking to people might be a much better way of doing your preparation and research than sitting in front of a computer until your eyes glaze over. Know that there's different strategies that can help you. And the thing that I love about having informational interviews or career chats is that you're doing two things at once. You're getting information, you're also making a connection. And that person might be someone that you come back to later and say, hey, thank you for the time that you gave me. Now that I know a little bit more, I've got some more questions for you. And so what we want to do is just a very quick, we talked a little bit about creating the agenda of these conversations. And so here, just a few more things to think about. Gratitude is always appreciated. To structure this with your goal in mind. You're not going there for social chit chat. You're going there for a purpose. So know what that is so that you can really guide the conversation. And at the same time, you want to pay attention to where they're at. Where did they get excited? And then from there, you can ask some follow-up questions. Again, like Jody was saying, is that having this be a dialogue, a conversation, rather than an interview, really helps to put people more at ease. People love talking about themselves, so let them. And at the same time, you also want to make sure that they know who you are and what your goals are, so that they can also answer your questions. It's just a back and forth. And for actual job search networking, the 20-minute networking meeting and the 4-hour job search are both books that I recommend that can be really helpful in going deeper in this.
In addition to that, the Muse has a really good, if you just Google the Muse informational interviewing, you'll get some really good articles. The same with Balanced Career. There's some that have good infographics as well to really help you.
Yeah. And so Jody, I don't know if there's anything, we don't want to go too much into etiquette. We're all adults here, but again, I think the things we wanted to highlight is going with reasonable expectations.
There's a few things here that, being respectful of their time. If you ask for, 15, 20 minutes of their time, don't do that and then just spend an hour or, go on with so many questions. At least acknowledge, for example, that you asked, say, goodness, I realized that time flies. It's already been 15 minutes and I'd asked you for 15 to 20 minutes of your time. I'm certainly okay if we need to wrap this up after the next question. Oftentimes they'll be like, oh, I don't have anything until 3, and you'll have more time, but they will also, regardless, be, wow, this person is respectful. What a professional. Like all of those kinds of messages that go, that come with that show what, the consummate professional that you are. And that goes a long way. So Yeah. And then, obviously thanking them, during the conversation. I always say in the beginning, thank them again, thank you so much again for agreeing to visit with me. I feel so fortunate to have met you at the, the gaming, whatever conference that we were at, like whatever it is, like, so you remind them where you are, because I will tell you from experience, and I know that Rhonda's going to nod her head and be like, yep, where if we set up an informational interview or a career chat, and it's 3 weeks in advance, and we write down their name, by the time that date comes and you see that person's name, you're like, ooh, what was this about? Do I need to prepare? And you get stressed out thinking you're supposed to do something. Well, when in reality, it's just a career chat, it's easy. But so if you can, also just remind them when you're starting, it's like, oh yeah, that's right. Tom connected us. That's right. If you have that mutual connection, to say that I'm so thankful for Tom, to Tom for connecting us, or, maybe put the last name too, but that helps them hone in on who you are. So enough said on that. Obviously, try and take their advice, but you're not always going to be able to, it's not always going to be applicable, or for whatever reason, it may not be, practical. It may not work for you, but if you do, definitely let them know, hey, I took your advice and reached out to, whatever. And I'm, thrilled to report they're willing to meet with me, and, whatever it is. So letting people know, they like to hear that, wow, what they said was helpful. So and then, of course, being in touch, right? Staying in touch, as Rhonda very well put it, that little circle graph. It's not like it just ends and then you're done with that person. You want to form a connection, that's going to be this ongoing relationship that you can keep them, abreast of your progress, every once in a while, things like that. And then my big one that I want out of this is really you to help them as well, because I really see networking as this more symbiotic relationship. It should be a give and take. It's not, you don't want to come across as the needy job seeker. I need a job. I need you to help me. Can you give me information? Who can you refer me to? That's all about you. And you really want to work on giving of yourself, of your time, of your talents, of your advice, because believe it or not, you may know things that in areas that they don't. And so you can be helpful. And it also makes, I think, you feel a little better about, the process of networking when you can actually help. And just lastly, I already really said this, but you're building your community. This is not just, you don't ghost them after you get your job. You let them know and thank them, be so, so appreciative, when you do get your job, and then stay in touch every once in a while. Maybe it's a holiday card, maybe it's a email, to just, because that can go a long way as well. And people appreciate that.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah. And so basically, we alluded to this towards the beginning of the session of, and I actually didn't mean to make this animated, but the question of what next. You've talked to somebody, and what do you do once you talk to them? So here's my recommendations, is that when you're, as you're having your first conversation, either take notes during the conversation or soon after, like, right after you talk to them, or in the evening, and think about how you might want to follow up with them. So Brian, you mentioned that there's some presenters that at your conference that you're already thinking, like 3 or 4 months from now, I might want to have a conversation with them. And so think, just spend even 5 minutes just brainstorming. All right, so in 2 or 3 months, I might want to ask for them to present at something. And so to make sure that person remembers me, maybe the next step would be, after the conference, I might just send them an email saying, I really enjoyed what you said. Here was an aspect of what you said that really struck me. People are very flattered if you pay attention to them. So if there's something that was memorable about what they said, tell them that. And you might even plant a seed and say, in a couple months, I might be reaching out to you and see if you might be interested in doing another presentation, or not. You don't have to necessarily set that up, but just think through again, what's your comfort level? What's going to make it easy for you in 3, 4, 6 months, 2 years from now to be able to come back to that person and say, hey, remember me? And so by listening to what they say and what's important to them, I've kept in touch with people over shared jokes or, just a sense of humor, and I see something that reminds me of them and I'll send them an email like, hey, I thought you might get a kick out of this. And so that's one thing to think about, is just, how do I feel connected with that person? How can I build on that? I want to talk about the email every 4 to 6 weeks if they are a good fit. And basically, there can be, again, that virtuous spiral where, first you have an informational interview and you had a good conversation with them. And then you realize, hey, their organization is really the best that I found. And I've talked to 20 different people and what they're doing and who they're working for. I want to do that and I want to work for them. And so then you can follow back up and let them know how you're doing. Again, a thank you for your time. Just to let you know, I'm still interested in the kind of work that you're doing, or after doing more research, I realized I really like your organization. So keep me in mind if there's any opportunities. And the reason why I say email every 4 to 6 weeks is because can be the pace that new jobs appear. And so that way you can kind of keep them top of mind. You're not begging, you're not bugging them, you're just reminding them that you're available. And if they do have a job, then you just answered one of their prayers of, oh, I already know this person. I already know that they're interested in them. I already have their resume. Let's bring them in for an interview. And so none of this guarantees a job, of course, but these are ways that you keep the connections warm. And like I said, sometimes you'll go from informational interviews to, all right, now I really know that I like your organization. Now I want advice on how I can be competitive here. What do people look for? Can you take a look at my resume, make sure that I'm hitting all the right words and all the right experience? And so with every conversation, even if you're still, keeping it more around the career chats, you're still developing that relationship. They see your enthusiasm. And like Tom was talking about, if you're excited about what they're doing and you show that is a way to develop that warmth and for them to see you as somebody that is going to do well at that particular organization. That being said, if you're not generally an enthusiastic person, you don't need a personality transplant, but just show your interest. That's all we're saying. Okay, so basically, I don't think that we have time for a breakout session, but I also think that since Brian is still, if you're still interested, I think it makes sense to have another mini coaching session, but also just pause in case there's any questions. Has anything come up in the chat, Jody? And you are muted.
Okay, sorry.
There we go.
I don't see any in the chat yet, but I would encourage people, if you do have any questions, dump them there or just take yourself off mute. We have a pretty nice, intimate group here. You could certainly just take yourself off on mute and ask them. And if not, we'll end with maybe describing what the homework is and then go into the additional mini coaching. Does that sound reasonable, yeah. Rhonda? Great.
Yeah.
And I think actually the mini coaching has been really a substitute for, if you will. I mean, they were going to do something similar in the breakout where they were getting ideas and such, but
Right.
with this, they've all had access to you and then each other, weighing in.
Yeah.
So it's been great. I've really enjoyed it, at least.
So, so you're not my target market, Jody, but hopefully the other participants have enjoyed it.
Exactly.
But basically, yeah, the breakout room was to practice. The homework is to practice.
Oh.
That is all we want you to do is to, to give yourself someone to have a conversation with.
Yeah.
And again, this shouldn't be number one on your list. Could be, but it doesn't have to be. This could be a friend that you're just like, oh, I'm thinking about this, that, and the other thing. What do you think? And but again, as we've been saying, it's all about developing muscles, and the only way to do that is by talking to people.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got, okay, so we're right at time, but I am happy. So Brian, what do you think? Do you want to have a 5-10 minute conversation about what's going on with you? Are you still here, Brian? Yes.
I am, yeah. I might have a delay. My computer got really slow during the session, so tell me if I get delayed.
Okay.
I just have a question first, I guess. A lot of the hesitations that I had around networking at the beginning of the session today were around that knowing what stage you're in. And I'm just wondering, like, are the stages fluid, where at certain events you might be seeking information in one stage, and then at another event you might be seeking information in another stage? And so I get kind of analysis paralysis, where I don't know when to call it quits in one stage. I get so excited about having a routine and kind of being confident in what I'm doing that I never really know when to transition to the next stage. But I have a sense that I can kind of tell which events would be good for which stage, right? So maybe if you can just kind of comment on that. And
yeah, I think that is such a good question. Yeah, Jody, did you want to say something?
No, I think I really do. I agree with that. What you were saying about it being, more fluid, and there might be, certain kinds of activities or events that, you might be more in one stage and vice versa. So I think realizing that is part of the answer and part of that comfort level, where you just realize it's not a formulaic, you're completely in this stage now, and then you're in that. It is much more fluid. So.
And I think you really hit it on the head, Brian, with it depends on the person and the event. And so what you might want to have, so if structure is something that's helpful for you, then you want to give yourself structure. But what you might want to do is just have a couple of parallel structures happening at the same time. So that you, so let's say, from what I understand, the stage that you're in is that you're looking for potential partners, that you know the financial coaching, what you want to do. Now it is, who else would be interested in doing this with me? And so when you're thinking about, kind of that intentional networking, who are you going to research? Who are you looking for? You're not going to be focusing on other financial coaches because they're not your potential partners. However, at a financial coaching conference, your potential partners aren't necessarily going to be here, but they, some of these coaches might have some advice or strategy. So where you're at right now might be a little bit more that informational interviewing, like, have you ever tried, or do you know of any coach who's ever tried to create a program at a nonprofit or a community college? And And then from that, you can get more information rather than partners. And so when you are going to an event or you're talking to somebody, I would have some time to prepare for that conversation and be like, so what stage or 2 stages might I be in with this person? And sometimes you don't know. So you start with an informational interview and then you find out, oh, they're adjunct faculty at a community college. Well, I've got, since I know what I'm trying to accomplish, then I already have some ideas on how to transition that conversation into, so have you had a financial coaching program at your community college? Do you want one? What are some of the challenges that you're seeing your students have, and how with life skills, and how are you trying to meet those students' needs? And what can be a challenge in those moments is then having that ask, because you are specifically looking to grow a program at a community college. And so if you like stumble into a conversation, it's very easy to kind of tiptoe around that, instead of saying, so would you be interested in exploring how we might be able to partner, how I can help you meet your goals and your students' needs in financial literacy. And so that, for me, is the thing that I need to practice, is those kinds of asks, because you're putting yourself out there, you're opening yourself up to rejection. And so that is where you start with practicing in front of a mirror, just saying things out loud, getting yourself comfortable with it. And then you might want to do some, depending on your comfort level, practice with me or Jody or somebody else in this room, so that you just get comfortable saying it. And so when you are in that situation, then it just comes out of your mouth because you've said it so many times already.
Yeah, it's funny. When I think of past colleagues who I feel like can do this seamlessly, not necessarily networking, but just like what you said, you start a conversation, you realize it's going in a direction different than what maybe you had talked about ahead of time. I've always really looked up to those folks. They look so like they've rehearsed it, or like they anticipated the conversation. It looks almost like they really thought through what was going to happen in the conversation, but really what you're sharing right now is like, it's just having an idea of where the conversation might go and having rehearsed all potential options. So I know I sound like a robot as I'm saying that, but it makes sense when I think of like the people I've looked up to. It didn't have to be as hard as I maybe made it out to be.
Exactly, because we don't see all the behind the scenes stuff that people do. And I fall into that trap all the time. Like, how can I be effortlessly blah, 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 and it's like, no, actually a lot of effort has gone into whatever looks effortless. And I forget. Oh yeah, it was singing. Like, I've got a lot of friends who like to sing, and they can just, do karaoke and stand up and sing a song. And I'm like, well, I wish that I could just go up and do that. They practice, they don't just decide one day I'm going to stand up in front of people. And so that's really, I think, if Jody and I want to send you off with a message, it is, just the planning and the practicing is the way to get comfortable with this, because networking, we all know how to do it. We all know how to build community. But we have segregated it into some like unattainable, either you have it or you don't, when the reality is like we all have it and we can all get better at it by practicing. So was that helpful, Brian? Did that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. So it's just kind of reiterating that, just as you shared with some other folks, really, it's about the practice. It's about just knowing how to take care of yourself and kind of what you need as you do things that are outside of your comfort zone. You're saying a lot of things that you're sharing with others are resonating with me as well. So thank you.
Yeah, good. Yeah, that's the other thing that, we hope that you see is, that we're all in this together. And, even though we're in different stages and at different levels, and what works for one person might not work for you, but at the same time, that we can learn from each other, and that this is some universal components here. And I like how you put it, Brian, like, work with your comfort level, learn how to take care of yourself. All of those things are important to be a confident and successful networker. And so it's not about powering through. It's not about beating yourself up if you get it wrong. It is about doing it and as much as possible, making it fun. And, when Tom and I were talking and I mentioned the book, Reality is Broken, one of the things that this gamer researcher writes about is one of the reasons why reality is broken is because we think that work can't be fun, that it's one or the other. And if it's fun, it can't be work. But what research shows is that when we're enjoying what we're doing, we get better at it. And most of it is because we like practicing it. Then it's not practicing, it's playing. And so not everything is fun and enjoyable. But when we can find our moments of joy in that, then that helps us to keep going. All right. So thank you, Brian. Look, you've got it right there. Yeah.
Hold that up again, Tom. What was that?
Reality is Broken by James.
Got it. Nice.
Yeah. No, it was a good reminder to bring it out and to read it. Again, it was published in 2011.
Yeah.
Like 10 years old. It's like hard to believe that.
Yep. And yeah, it was, I read it while I was working on my PhD, actually. Like it was, one of the things that we talked about, is just why is work so hard? So.
What was your PhD?
It was in management. So yeah, doctorate of management. So yeah. Okay. If there's anything else, what we're going to be talking, so next week is really going to be focusing in on, all right, so you got all the basics, you tried things out. Now, how are you going to make this work for you? And so we've been touching on this all throughout. We're going to give some more specific strategies. And Jody, would you put the link to the survey in the chat if you haven't done that already? And if you have
already did it, I can move it down again. But
Yeah.
yes, please, a plea to please open that link, and then you can do it right when this ends or whenever before you leave for the night would be great. It's good to get your perspective, and it's really helpful.
And the thing that I want, because I think we, have a question on like, what's one thing that we could do better? What I would love is to hear if there's anything specific you want us to make sure we touch on next week. So if like the mini coaching sessions were great, you want to do more of that, let us know. If the fact that we didn't have a breakout room really disappointed you and you wanted to practice some of these things, let us know. And so we will make sure that the last session really gives you what you need And
Unbelievable. It's the last session. It's gone so
I
quickly.
I know. And it's going to be Thanksgiving week. So we'll have a lot of stuff to be grateful for. And okay. So thank you guys so much. And just give a little bit, if there's any other questions, please unmute yourself. And so I've got another 5 minutes that I can be here, and otherwise we'll let you go.
And Brian, would you like us to, we can turn off the recording now, or we can do it after your, oh wait, I'm sorry. Are we doing,
I mean, Brian, do you have more questions? Do you want to do more of a mini coaching?
anymore, or you're all set with what we already did?
I think I'm going to stick with, I've kind of written out my elevator speech for the rest of my conference, so I'll give you more an update next week.
Awesome.